He wants me to shave my bush, Josie said, disgusted by the hypocrisy of dating a man hairy everywhere except his head. I told him to go down on me, which, by the way, we should not have to ask, and he said no. He does not like Bush, probably would vote for him as president, but not the puss. We actually should get consent for that, I smiled, and she rolled her eyes. Josie was frustrated. Dating was a confusing experience for women in 2026. Having boundaries kept you surprisingly alone, but not having them kept you wishing you were. Baldman, in name and literal looks, was an international lawyer for hedge funds and had swept her with sporadic travel and fine dining. But in terms of connection, he was shiny only in head, not in heart. He was boring. The only adventures he offered were in flights filled with conversations that made her want to sleep through them over sleeping with him. Yet this was the life. She had bagged a rich man, and quite frankly, poorer ones were not that interesting either. I want to use him, you know? If I could just change his body, his mind, and overall personality, he would be perfect, she declared, as frustrated as she was sincere. How patriarchic of you, I laughed at my wit. We were now in a packed metro, wondering why our life was still somehow on the move to places that we did not want to go to, but no longer knowing what we actually wanted. Did we want marriage or a bold F-buddy that had flight points? This was the modern woman, finally using men in the same way they had always used us, or rather assuring reciprocity. Give me the cash and I'll give you compassion. Yet Josie felt bored and missed her dog on the weekend trips to Paris or Dubai. I feel like all my life I aim to get luxury for myself, and I get it. Maybe not in the ways I thought, but with my family gone, it just doesn't feel fulfilling, you know? I have no one to talk to about my adventures or dreams, and it oddly makes them feel less. No one warns you that when someone you love dies, it is you that truly passes away, and how terrifying it feels to know you may not have ever been truly alive. My grandmother was my mother, and she was so central to how I embraced life, even if not with the best arms. Yet now I was rebuilding my business, my body, and my relationship with me, determined to give myself the life I wanted to give me with her. But I didn't want it the same, and it was strange. I went from the most annoyingly ambitious person, obsessed every day with leaving an impact in the world, to someone that felt more impacted by it. When he said you should shave it for me next time, I just felt gross by him, not my bush. She vocally demanded. I noted the difference, and an elderly woman across from us nodded as if she did too. I can't be someone without feelings if I'm exchanging body hair discussions in Dubai. It's too intimate. Sigh. Guess it's on to the next rich guy. Hopefully the next one notices the irony of being bald on the top of his head and demanding a woman be bald in her bottom one, just to get head. I laughed as we exited to our stop and wondered if Josie was just resisting what I understood. Luxury is great, and I'll never complain about it. But with love, that is just phenomenal. All right, let's heal. Let's discuss. I'm noticing in a lot of my friends, especially ones that are trying to, make the leap to higher economic status and kind of, the world is sinking, right? And if there's one thing that when you hang out with rich people or when you go to wealthier places and parties, is that there is money. There is money. You're just not getting it. And I've always been somebody that has attracted wealth and attracted luxury just on my plain personality, just in who I am, because the irony of me, being wealthy and going to wealthy spots despite growing up in poverty is I think I have the personality of wealth, or what wealthy people think is the personality of wealth, which is just enjoy, just be present, just love yourself and get through. When we think about wealthy people, particularly narcissistic wealthy people that are, CEOs that want to own the world, like Musk or Bezos, we think of them as evil and conniving, and obviously so, but they think their personality is present. And perhaps it is in terms of they are very present in where they are, but sure don't want anyone else on the planet. And I have struggled. I think my personality is very present, but my mind travels. And I've always been ambitious. I've always wanted to build an empire. I have multiple failed businesses in terms of, and multiple failed career moments. You know, I've had my victories, but I kind of was preparing myself for this grand life where I would finally, be doing what I want, which is singing and acting and writing and comedy. And I would make all this money and provide for myself the luxury rather than, just being with luxurious people that love me. And then it just didn't happen. And I kept on saying, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. I'm going to do it. I'm going to try. And my grandmother died. And now I'm actually trying. Now I'm trying to transform and transition into the life that I want. And it's scary because I'm shifting from this money mindset, which is I have to make money and I have to surround myself around money. Mind you, I've never been somebody that has, if anything, I've stood up against classism and the devastation of being poor and being raised to think like a poor person, act like a poor person, like I was, every day is just counting dollars and oh my God, you spilled milk. Are you a savage? That mentality. I don't want to be harsh on me. And the year or so, like 2 years before my grandmother passed, I started to notice not only how harsh I was on myself, but how harsh I was raised to be on myself. My grandmother was lovely, but she was hard. And my mother was even harder. And I just didn't want to be that way because I wasn't getting the results I wanted. I wasn't living the life I wanted, even though, yeah, sure, the parties are great and you could get some cool stuff and I'm breaking material patterns and cycles, but I wasn't exactly breaking emotional and spiritual ones. And my mother was such a good example to me of somebody that no matter how much money she had, she never had joy. And I was kind of the opposite. I always had joy, but because I yo-yoed in money, I didn't feel like I could have it. And when my grandmother passed away, I was like, I need to have it. I need to be happy and see how much money that gets me because unhappiness didn't exactly hook me up. And I think for Josie, bringing it to the topic, which is dating and, bodily requirements, I think there's just this disconnect that everyone is having between material and spiritual and kind of realizing that access to luxury, being able to get the trends and the fads, it doesn't exactly fulfill the emptiness. They're just at best brief bursts. And there is an honor to be able to style yourself. I think there's something really cool to be able to afford the fashion or know where to get the fashion that represents who you are. That is luck. That is privilege. But there's also anything outside of you can only fulfill so much what is within. And when my grandmother passed, it shook me because I was alone. I have no family. And the dreams that I had didn't come true and it hadn't come true yet. And it made me reanalyze my relationship with them and whether or not, it's kind of like I did have luxury. I had my grandmother's love. I had someone that rode for me until dawn and was the only healthy relationship I've ever known. And it wasn't even, that healthy, right? Like my grandmother liked me. I was her favorite human being. I loved her. She was my favorite human being. And she had prickly, little trauma patterns that I have certainly inherited and wanted to heal. But we clicked. And I think she taught me what my family swore they had learned, which is true love isn't perfect. loving someone and liking someone so deeply doesn't absolve them from their poor behaviors or from their flaws. But you learn how to work through them because the best outweighs the worst. And it's not something you're lying to yourself about. It's not something you're making up. They are good enough to make you stay for when they're bad too much, you know? Like my grandmother had anger issues and she could be explosive, but she was so sweet and she was so doll-like and I liked her. And I never really had a love like that, you know, where I felt all my life I was at best liked by people for how I made them like themselves, but I wasn't loved. I wasn't exactly known. I never really had a partner that asked me or cared about what I needed and what I wanted. And even if at the same time it was the same thing as them, I dated a lot of artists. Me and my mother we had similar personality traits, loving to laugh, loving to go out. Yet I was always fitting in their world. We eat what they want to eat. We laugh about what they want to laugh about. We talk about what they want to talk about. And I think, you know, my grandmother could be the same way, but because we were so alike, I could ignore that. And I think with Josie, she's dating these richer men that give her what we're told we're all supposed to want. You know, the trips, the luxury bags. And it's not necessarily that she can't afford them. I mean, not to that extent. She definitely has to work extra hours. But there is something, a feeling of, am I selling my soul? You know, does it really feel luxurious if you're hanging out with a raisin, a human raisin? This man is dry. And I understood what she was saying and what she was meaning, because you kind of feel with this person, like you should feel grateful I'm even with you because you like my personality, you think I'm pretty, and you're not serving it up. You're just serving the flight tickets. And I think with a lot of, you know, in a patriarchy, what men don't realize is that they set up this system they're angry about, which is, I provide for you financially, you provide for me spiritually. And now women are more capable of providing for themselves financially. So they really want to know, what are you going to give me spiritually? Because if you don't have the cash, I hope you have the compassion. I hope you have the personality. And I think, the idea of the modern woman being able to use men or use people for their money and kind of be this phenomenal free woman because of it, I think is distorted. And it's another way of depleting her humanity. You do hang out with somebody and something happens to you. You know, you exchange energy, you exchange ideas, you exchange personality. If this person enters your body and doesn't give it pleasure, doesn't give it respect, it does something to you. It's okay to say you feel. And the same thing goes for men, this idea of, manipulating her and being narcissistic or making sure she's not using you. These are felt pressures. This is felt manipulation. Using her for her body, just using her for a moment. No, 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 no. Everybody is feeling, and yet we are being told our freedom is defined by how we don't feel for things that should make us feel. And I think with Josie, she started her own business, her own marketing. It's been a yo-yo, and there's just this feeling of, I should at least be able to enjoy the luxuries that this man is giving me. I deserve it. I work hard for it, and I don't get it on my own. This guy gets it. I should be able to surpass these things, like his stupid kind of, maybe I should just yank away the bush for this bald man. And it's just hard to see. I grew up with a mother that was very, very, both my parents were very money obsessed. My father was a con man that would do anything to get money from whatever man or woman he was sleeping with. My mother, if you overcharged her $3, there went her weekend. She was mad and in a bad mood and stayed home. And I'm just learning now how to transmute that attachment to money and that feeling like it should dominate my feelings. And it's hard because I'm on an earth where you need money. You need money to eat. You need money to get health. You need money to have luxury. And kind of removing the feelings of money to just feel abundant isn't easy. And I think sometimes, like with Josie, that's what we're really asking for. Full abundance. I want the money, but I also want to be moved. I want the money so I can enjoy my dinner. I want the money so that I could enjoy my partner, so that I can enjoy my travels. And yet everyone oddly feels sold out. And going through this grief and rebuilding my business, rebuilding my life, rebuilding my mind, rebuilding my body has made me feel and realize like maybe I've been selling out the whole time. Maybe what I thought I would get if I just did that, I just did this, I already had in my grandmother. So check out deandreviewsitall.com, click on the Daddy Recovery section, and follow me on all platforms, including as Hardin. All righty, goodbye.